bitches, every city in my tribe. Look behind. Booty dominate the world, peaches ripe.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, can't complain.
Good.
So,
What's that?
yeah, I'm a Christian. My basically stance is that, abortion is killing, it's murder. I understand that, in situations of rape, it's a very difficult situation for women to, raise a child and, come to conception, the point of conception and not conception, birth, I guess, um, and have to go through the process of a pregnancy. I think that's also why rape is such a horrendous crime, especially particularly in situations where the woman ends up getting pregnant.
Hey, I'm
But
sorry
I
to
don't
interrupt,
think,
but could you use like SA or R word just because TikTok likes to block people with that kind of language?
yeah, of course, of course.
Awesome. Yeah, keep going.
I don't think the child or the fetus at that point is guilty of anything, and I think we should have laws in place that obviously address how heinous of a crime that is. If it's a situation where that young mother can't take care of the child or doesn't want to take care of that child, I think we have to have things in place where that child can either be adopted or resources are provided for that child independently. But I don't think that that life should be taken. I think we just have to have better laws to protect those types of women in those types of situations without actually taking the
What
life.
laws are you thinking of? So you want to criminalize abortion?
Uh, yeah, I would say so. I think it's
And
murder.
then
I don't
what
think it's anything
penalty would there be?
we would have to. I don't have the specific answer. I think that would have to go and be down through general consensus through the legislature. I think women have to and men have to vote on it. But if a life is being irreversibly changed, I think the consequences should be adequate to prevent it. It's just as bad as murder. So very
What?
serious
Why is it
repercussions.
just as bad as murder?
You have to go through the process of carrying this baby for 9 months. It's very traumatic on the human being, right? If the alternative is abortion, I think we have to have something that will adequately protect women from having that ever come up.
Okay, well, but why is abortion murder?
Because there's a living being that without intervention would otherwise be born and have a life.
So that's not necessarily true. It just has the potential for life.
True. I mean, obviously, we don't know if that child will be healthy and all that stuff. But
Right.
without
So
the point is
why does that life have value?
we don't know what value a life has until we look at it in retrospect. I mean, I think just life in itself though has inherent value.
Why?
I'm, you don't believe life has value? Is that
Well, life has a lot of nuance. And so if we're just talking about the term life itself, an apple on a tree is alive. Is it immoral to pick that apple?
is an apple alive or are the seeds alive?
The apple's alive, it's growing, just like an embryo is growing.
Right, the seeds. And so, I mean, I think there's value in an apple because it has the potential to grow into a tree.
Right, but is it immoral to pick that apple, thus stopping its growth?
So the seeds are what actually contains life. The flesh of the apple itself is just fuel for those seeds, right? So when the apple falls, it gets absorbed by the seeds, and then eventually, hopefully,
Right, but
grows
I'm not
into it.
saying about when it falls. I'm saying is it immoral to pick it from that tree? Because essentially you're stopping the growing process, which is
Not
what
necessarily,
abortion is stopping the growing process of a fetus.
right? Not necessarily. I mean, I think we have to talk about sustainability and how you pick apples. If you are picking apples in a way that's not sustainable and you're cutting the life of those seeds, I think that is a problem. I think that's an agricultural problem. But if you were to say, pick the apple and then plant those seeds, I don't see any issue with that because you're not really taking life, you're taking some fuel. But the ultimate end goal and the reason why that tree produced an apple was for animals that pick it and spread the seed in various locations.
Right, but that's not my point is that you want to give moral consideration to a fetus because it is alive. And I'm saying that there are a lot of things that are alive that we don't give moral consideration to. So I'm asking you why this specific being is you want to give
I
that
think
moral consideration to.
I think we should give moral consideration to all living beings.
I see. So you think that eating animals is wrong.
Correct.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, why does a fetus's right to life supersede a woman's bodily autonomy?
So with the bodily autonomy question, I think we have to go back. It's not, the pregnancy that's the choice, right? The sexual act where the baby is conceived is also bodily autonomy. So that woman, other than in situations of rape, obviously, where there was no consent, um, chose to have sexual intercourse in a way that would produce a child. And so obviously the repercussion takes 9 months to happen, and it's a process. But it's not like pulling a trigger, which is instantaneous. But I don't see it as any different, right? There's still a choice that's made.
Right, but
To have,
consent to sex is not consent to pregnancy, like you just said.
but that's
So
the
why,
basic
once a
idea.
woman becomes pregnant, does she just automatically lose the rights to her own body?
Well, what do you think the purpose of sex is?
I think it has multiple purposes. If I were to kind of rate it in terms of most common to biological, I think sex is honestly used more for pleasure and emotional intimacy than for procreation.
I don't believe that's the case. If you look at biological history,
Really?
right?
I mean,
And
like, just ask anyone in the chat, how many times have you had sex trying to not create a baby versus trying to create a baby? I mean, mine's
just
probably thousands to
I'm not
one.
right. I'm not going to say that I'm not a sinner. I have sinned, but at the end of the day, I acknowledge what I did was wrong. In the past,
Well,
when I
sex is
had
not a
sex,
sin. I don't know what that has to do with anything.
well, premarital sex is a sin.
So you're just using this kind of as a backdoor to insert your religious morality.
No, not at all. I think there's logical
Then
reasons,
why is
but I
that coming up?
say it again.
Then why is that coming up? Because not everyone subscribes to your religion.
It has nothing to do with my religion. You're taking a life.
You've brought it up. You brought it up that premarital sex is a sin. You brought up, I mean, your first opening statement was Christian. You're a Christian. I don't know what that has to do with anything.
You're asking me my perspective. That's my background and my perspective. You don't
Right,
have to
I'm
have
trying
that
to
perspective.
expand on your thoughts, and it seems
Right.
that your thoughts are heavily influenced by your religion, but not everyone subscribes to your religion.
And
So
that's
why would
fair.
you want to implement policy that is derived from this?
It's not derived solely from my religion. That just paints my worldview. But there's also
Okay.
the logical underpinning. And I don't
So
think you have
then,
to be religious to
why
have a moral,
again
moral.
does a woman lose the rights to her body once she becomes pregnant?
She's not losing rights to her body. She chose to have sexual intercourse, which ultimately is the form of reproduction that results in pregnancy. So if you don't want to have
So essentially, you want to punish her and force her to carry an unwanted pregnancy because she had sex.
not at all. I think she should just, part of consent is understanding the repercussions of your actions, right? So part
It
of
is not.
consent is,
Consent means to agree to. And just because you agree to sex does not mean you agree to pregnancy.
if
It
you don't
is
know
an
what sex, if you don't know what
unwanted.
sex, if you don't know what sex is, how are you consenting to it?
What do you mean if you don't know what sex is?
Sex is a means of reproduction and procreation. That's what the meaning is.
Right, but it's not its singular purpose. And if that is not the purpose you are using it for, and you have an unintended occurrence, that is just an accident.
It's
And
only
I don't
not
know
the
why, if
reason
you
for
have
it.
an accident, you shouldn't have the right to again say, I do not give consent to for this fetus to use my body.
So let me ask you this, right? Before abortion, before we had medications or procedures to even allow for abortions to happen, do you think people would even make that consideration? No, they would understand that the sexual act was for reproduction. If you wanted pleasure out of it or intimacy, there are other ways to have sexual acts where pregnancy is not a risk. So when you consent to sexual intercourse where you inseminate yourself, that is the natural repercussion. Biologically, that's what the purpose of that act is.
Sure, biologically it is, but again, it's not always the intention, which makes it an accident. And I mean, the
It doesn't
UN
make
came
an
out with a
accident.
study in 2016 saying that forced pregnancy is equivalent to torture. And I don't understand how you could say it would be ethical as a society to force women to carry pregnancy that they don't want.
No, I think a forced pregnancy in a situation of rape is a crime, right? Or sorry for
It's
using that
not
term.
just force. All force is to do something against someone's will. So if it is not her will to remain pregnant and you forced her to, that is what forced pregnancy is.
If you were to have a child a day after, seconds after you had a sexual act, this wouldn't even be a debate. The only reason there's that question is because it takes 9 months, and so you have the ability to perform that, right?
It's a lazy argument.
It's not.
It is a lazy argument. Like, I mean, we could,
without
if
without
we go down
intervention.
those roads, I could say, well, if pregnancy was 5 years, maybe men like you would be a little bit more empathetic and realize the experience of pregnancy is not always an easy one.
I don't
Like,
think
now
it's an
I
easy one.
like to
It's
say
very difficult.
like unrealistic hypotheticals.
I understand how difficult it is, and that's why I'm saying the consequences of it being forced on a woman should be, equivalent to that. I think,
Right.
it's
So now
probably
pregnancy is
what.
just I mean, you're just saying it's a punishment for women who have sex.
I don't think it's a punishment at all. I think life is beautiful.
It is a punishment if you don't want to be pregnant and someone forces you to continue it.
I think that person should choose to have sexual action, or, have like, do sexual acts that don't result in pregnancy if that's their
So
concern.
again, now you want to punish her by saying because you don't want pregnancy or because you don't want motherhood, you need to not partake in something that you find fulfillment or enjoyment or emotional intimacy out of. Like
There's so many
it's
other
very,
ways. That's such a lost way to look at it. Like there's so many other
it's
ways
not
to
a
find
lost way.
intimacy. Like it's literally just pleasure, right? Like so you could have, oral sex, you could have, almost any other kind of thing, just having a conversation with a person that you
See, and
love.
again,
Like
so you're recommending that someone do something else so that it fits your own comfort level, which again, you're just punishing women for it.
how am I punishing women? I don't understand.
You're saying if you don't want to be
They're
pregnant and
they're
you
con-
don't want
they're
to have
consciously
motherhood, then
making
don't have
they're
intercourse
consciously
because that's
making
its only reason. And if you
they're
do have
consciously
intercourse,
making
then
a
you can't
choice.
have an abortion because essentially you did this to yourself. So
They're
yes,
consciously
it is.
making they're consciously making a choice to
There,
allow someone to
no,
impregnate, correct, right?
no. And honestly, I haven't heard you say one thing about a man's accountability in this situation.
I
It
told
seems
you
you only
not
want women to have physical and legal accountability.
not at all. I think men should be held responsible too if it's by force, If it was consensual on both sides, then, they should come to an agreement and, take care of that child together. If they don't want to take care of the child, I don't think that child.
Why is consent and doing things voluntary not important to you? Like pregnancy should be voluntary. Parenthood should be voluntary. When you force people to do things, it's not a healthy way to implement. It's not a healthy blueprint to have in society.
You're not forcing anyone. These are people who are
You
choosing to
are.
partake in
No, you
sexual
are.
acts. And you act as if sex is a right, It's like
I'm
it's a
not
privilege.
acting that it is a right, and I don't think it's a privilege.
Of course it is.
It's not.
You have
Who
to
is the
find someone
privileged person?
for both parties to find someone that you care about, to trust enough to
That's
go
not
through
what
that risk
privilege
with.
is.
Say it again.
That's not what privilege is. It's an enjoyable thing, but not. So you're saying that some people shouldn't have the privilege and some people should.
No, I think you both have to come to that decision, and I think true consent is understanding the repercussions of what your actions are.
That's not true consent. Consent means to agree. Just because, like, I get into a
To agree to
car
what? Though?
and I
You can't
understand
agree
that
to
there is
something
a
that you don't
risk
know.
I could
If
get.
you don't know,
Are you going
if
to
you
listen
don't
or are
know
you
what
just
it
going to
is,
keep talking?
if you don't know what consent is,
Are
though,
you
how
going
are you
to
agreeing?
listen or are you just going to keep talking?
You've been doing that the entire conversation.
Okay, well, I guess we're at an impasse then. Thanks so much.
Fair enough. You too.
Stay 5 minutes over.
I'm so fucking cute, bitch.